Your enemies are not your problem. Your reaction to your enemies is your problem. Every person who opposes you, criticizes you, or tries to destroy you contains the seeds of your greatest advantage, but only if you understand how to transform opposition into opportunity and hatred into fuel for your success. Most people let their enemies weaken them through anger, revenge fantasies, and defensive reactions that drain energy and focus. But the greatest leaders in history have used a completely different approach that not only neutralizes their enemies, but actually makes them stronger through the process of facing opposition. Today, I am going to reveal the ancient psychological strategies that turn your worst enemies into your most valuable assets. This is not about being passive or turning the other cheek. This is about being strategically superior to people who want to harm you by using their negative energy to accelerate your own growth and achievement. Stay until the end because mastering these techniques will transform every form of opposition you face from a source of stress into a source of power. The first strategy is using criticism as free consulting that reveals your blind spots and areas for improvement. Most people become defensive when criticized and either reject all negative feedback or become devastated by it. But strategically minded people treat criticism as valuable market research that shows them how their actions and decisions are perceived by others and where they might need to adjust their approach. Even harsh, unfair, or malicious criticism often contains grains of truth that can help you become more effective if you can separate the useful information from the emotional delivery and personal attacks. When someone criticizes you, instead of immediately defending yourself or attacking them back, ask yourself what truth might be hidden in their complaints. What patterns do you notice in the criticisms you receive from different sources? How could you use this feedback to improve your performance, communication, or strategy? This approach transforms critics from sources of stress into sources of insight and makes you stronger rather than just making you angry. Marcus Aurelius faced constant criticism from senators, military leaders, and citizens who disagreed with his policies and decisions. Instead of being wounded by their attacks, he used their feedback to refine his approach and better understand how his actions affected different groups within the empire. He wrote that criticism is often more valuable than praise because it reveals problems that supporters might be too polite to mention. The second strategy is using opposition as motivation that drives you to achieve more than you would have achieved without resistance. Easy goals do not require much growth, but difficult goals that involve overcoming intelligent opposition force you to develop skills, strategies, and capabilities that serve you for the rest of your life. People who want to stop you from succeeding often push you to work harder, think smarter, and become more disciplined than you would have been if everyone supported your efforts from the beginning. Instead of resenting people who make your path more difficult, thank them mentally for forcing you to become stronger and more capable than you originally planned to be. Use their doubt as proof that your goals are ambitious enough to be worth pursuing. Use their resistance as evidence that you are threatening the status quo in ways that create real change. When people try to discourage you from pursuing your dreams, let their pessimism fuel your determination to prove that their limitations do not apply to you. This mindset transforms every obstacle into training and every opponent into a coach who helps you develop the skills needed for victory. The third strategy is using enemies as contrast that makes your character and achievements more visible and admirable to others. Without darkness, light cannot be seen. Without opposition, virtue cannot be demonstrated. Without enemies, your strength remains theoretical rather than proven. People who attack you often draw attention to your work and achievements that might have gone unnoticed if no one had bothered to criticize them. Controversies create curiosity, and attempts to silence you often amplify your message to audiences who would never have discovered you otherwise. When people try to destroy your reputation, they often end up researching your background and accomplishments more thoroughly than your supporters do, which sometimes leads them to discover strengths and achievements they did not expect. Some of your fiercest enemies eventually become your most vocal advocates when they realize that their initial impressions were based on incomplete or biased information. Use opposition as an opportunity to demonstrate grace under pressure, integrity under attack, and persistence despite resistance. These qualities are only visible when tested, and enemies provide the testing that allows others to see your true character. Seneca understood this principle when he remained dignified and productive despite political enemies who constantly plotted against him. His ability to continue his philosophical work and maintain his principles while under attack actually increased his reputation and influence rather than diminishing them. The fourth strategy is using conflict as education that teaches you about human psychology, power dynamics, and strategic thinking in ways that peaceful times cannot. Every enemy teaches you something valuable about motivation, tactics, weaknesses, and the methods people use to pursue their objectives. Studying your opponents helps you understand patterns of human behavior that serve you in all future relationships and conflicts. People who try to manipulate you teach you to recognize manipulation techniques that others might use in the future. People who attack your weaknesses show you where you need to build strength and resilience. People who use specific tactics against you give you insight into those same tactics that you can recognize and counter when others try to use them. This education makes you more sophisticated in dealing with all types of people and situations, not just current conflicts. The fifth strategy is using enemies as accountability partners who keep you honest and prevent you from becoming complacent or arrogant. Friends and supporters often tell you what you want to hear, but enemies tell you uncomfortable truths that you need to hear for continued growth and improvement. Opposition forces you to examine your decisions more carefully, prepare more thoroughly, and perform at higher levels because you know that any mistakes will be noticed and exploited by people who want to see you fail. This scrutiny, while uncomfortable, often leads to better outcomes than you would achieve if no one were paying attention to your performance. Use the knowledge that enemies are watching as motivation to maintain high standards and avoid behavior that could legitimately be criticized. Let their attention keep you focused on excellence rather than allowing you to become sloppy or self-indulgent. The sixth strategy is using attempts to harm you as opportunities to demonstrate forgiveness, wisdom, and strength that inspire others and build your reputation for character and leadership. How you respond to attacks reveals more about your character than how you behave when everything is going well. People watch how you handle criticism, betrayal, and unfair treatment because these situations reveal your true values and emotional maturity. Responding to enemies with dignity, fairness, and even generosity when appropriate creates powerful impressions that last far longer than the original conflicts. This does not mean being naive or failing to protect yourself from genuine threats. It means choosing responses that demonstrate the person you want to be rather than just reacting emotionally to how you have been treated. Epictetus taught that no one can harm you without your permission because external actions cannot damage your character or your ability to respond wisely unless you choose to let them. He understood that enemies provide opportunities to practice virtue that would not exist without opposition. The seventh strategy is using the energy and attention that enemies direct toward you as fuel for your own projects and goals. Negative attention is still attention, and attention can be converted into influence, opportunity, and achievement if you know how to redirect it strategically. Instead of getting trapped in defensive arguments or revenge plots that consume your time and energy, use the interest that conflict generates to promote your work, clarify your message, and reach new audiences. People who attack you often end up promoting your brand and expanding your reach more effectively than your supporters do, because controversy generates more engagement and discussion than simple agreement. The ultimate strategy for dealing with enemies is realizing that the best revenge is massive success, And the highest form of victory is making your enemies irrelevant through your achievements, rather than defeated through direct conflict. When you become so successful and valuable that their opposition cannot meaningfully affect your progress, they either give up trying to harm you or eventually come to respect your accomplishments despite their initial hostility. Focus your energy on building something so impressive that your enemies become insignificant, rather than focusing your energy on fighting people who distract you from creating value and achieving your goals. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best way to take revenge on your enemies is not to be like them. The greatest victory over people who want to diminish you